What's going on, guys? Big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta and we are back as promised with the second video of this marathon. So we have already done the deck profile on the Siegfried deck that plays pretty much with like an extra attacker and a huge attacker like Deadly Mason or Skydiver and Bracky, Devil Dome or the Juggernaut. And today we're bringing you the deck from the Limit Break era. So this is one of the decks that's really made Spike very strong and showed everyone else that Spike is a force to be reckoned with. And before that, we didn't really had that good of a turn, but now you had like that finishing turn like you have now with the GB8, and you had that with this clan for the first time with this deck. So I will go through the deck, explain the cards, and also show you a combo at the end of the video. But before we do all that, we have to set the rules, of course. So in this deck, same as last deck, you cannot play cards from V, you cannot play cards that require you to have Generation Break, and you cannot play cards from the Legion era. But you could play anything else you want. So it doesn't really matter if a card came out way later in the set, or it's a K Elemental or whatever, you could play that as long as it does not have Legion or Generation Break. So it would not be the same deck as we had before, it would be the same idea, but an upgraded version of it. Okay, now we could just go through the deck and I'll come back and explain the cards. So the Break Ride of Spike Brothers is of course Bad and Dragger. If you didn't know the card, I will explain his skill in a minute, but this was the card that pretty much gave your whole field, or the attackers at least, the Bracky and the Juggernaut skill. It was one of the best break rides, and in my opinion still the best one next to the one from Dimension Police. Then we add in the 3 copies of the Demonic Lord Deadly Emperor, 1 copy of Demonic Lord Deadly Lucifer, and 1 copy of Skydiver. For the grade 2 lineup, we start with 2 copies of Dead Heat's Boa, 2 copies of the Zachary's, and then we add the 3 copies of Devil Dome, and of course the 4 copies of Deadly Mason. Reds. For the grade 1 lineup, we play 4 PGs. I know that this deck in the old days didn't really need to play 4 PGs, but I still like to play the 4. Even then, I like to play 4. The reason is I would like to use my starter, which is Mega Trainer, to search something else than the Perfect Guard, and it's nice to have the Perfect Guard already in your hands, depending also on which deck you're playing against. 3 copies of Reckless Express, followed up by 2 copies of Dead Flag, and then 2 Limit Break Enablers, and we end up with 2 copies of Underboy. For the starter, I play Mega Trainer. I will talk later about the other choice, which is an amazing choice, but I still like to play Mega Trainer in this deck. Then we have our trigger lineup. We start with the 4 crits, being the Silent Joker. Then we add in 2 deadly crits, being Deadly Striker. We add in 6 draws, being 4 Schemer and 2 Polin, and end up with 4 heals. Not Tiara, but another one, Sandra. Alright, so that's kind of it for the lineup. Let's come back and explain the skills. So first of all, the most important card in the deck is of course your Bad and Dragger. Bad and Dragger is a limit breaker. Limit break means you need to have 4 damage to be able to get the skill off. And a break ride means whenever you ride on the top of it, it gets the skill, or gives the skill to the Vanguard. So whenever you ride on the top of this unit, if you have 4 damage, or you already have a limit break enabler on the field, which is of course your Elsa. Elsa has a limit break enabler, as you can see from the skill. Her skill gives you limit break even if you don't have 4 damage. And because in this deck you could kind of search it out with your starter, it does make your life easier. So the Bad and Dragger, what he does is whenever you ride on the top of him, if you have 4 damage, he gives your Vanguard an extra 10k, and he also gets the skill to your next Vanguard. So the unit that rides on the top of it gets the skill, which is whenever your rearguard attacks, it gets plus 10k, and at the end of the battle it goes back to the bottom of the deck. So it's kind of the same skill as the GB8, but the GB8 also calls something, but also gives the extra 10k. And this is when I'll explain later in the Legion deck where the skill of the GB8 came from. But the important thing about this card is that when you multi-attack, those new rearguards that come to the field and attack will also get that extra 10k. And that's when multi-attacking in Spike Brothers became very effective, because remember guys that triggers were only 5k, or they give 5k. So even if your opponent gets one trigger, you could still hit above that with the extra 10k that he gives. If they get 2 triggers, sometimes you could even hit above that. Even if they get 3 triggers, you could hit above that. So 4 copies of Vanguard Dragger, you want to get him as your first right target. He also has the second ability, which is also very good. Whenever he's boosted by a Spike Brother unit, he gets an extra 2k. So with the Wonder Boy, you also make the 21 column, which is a very strong column, especially in the early games. That's your opponents would need to put a perfect guard to guard that attack, or lose a lot of cards from their hand to do that. Because you're attacking for 21, they need 20k shield to do a 2 to pass, which is a lot, because that would mean 2 big cards from their hand, or just a perfect guard, which is the same, also 2 cards. Also, the next card that we have is the card that combines very well with the Vanguard Dragger, which is Deadly Emperor. So Deadly Emperor has the ability that whenever he attacks, and if you have Limit Break 4, also very important, he attacks Limit Break 4, you put 2 cards from your hand into the soul, you counterblast 2, and he calls 2 units from your deck to an open rearguard circle, and that's it. His second ability also gives him extra 3k whenever he's boosted by a Spike Brother unit. So if you boost him again with a Wonder Boy, then you have that 21 column. He gets 3k, he gets 2k, but he's 10k, he's 11. So it's the same. It's one of the few cards in the Limit Break era that we played that was only a 10k. Because he was so good, we kept playing him. There is another card that you could play, which is the Catapult. The Catapult has, of course, also the same ability, but he requires you to counterblast 2 and discard a copy of him, which we call the Persona Blast. And the problem with this card is that you don't always have the extra copy of him in your hand. Well, you always, most of the time, you have 2 cards to just discard or to put into your soul with him. Also, he puts the card into the soul, he discards them, so that's the difference. And you could play 3 copies of him and get away with it, but you have to play 4 copies of him if you want to get his skill off. So you combine these 2 and you have an amazing field, as you could understand, because I will explain later in the combo. But what you do is you ride on the top of him, you have Limit Break, you have 2 attackers on both sides, you attack with them, and then they go to the bottom of the deck because of his ability, and then you call new one with him, and so you have 5 very strong attacks to kill your opponent. And that combo only costs you 2 cards from hand and 2 counterblasts, which is not much at that time. But let's say you don't have counterblasts, then that's when Deadly Lucifer comes in handy, or you have already done this turn and you want to go into him, or a first right target that puts a lot or more pressure on your opponent. Although you always want to go into Vanguard Dragger, but he's also nice. Sometimes your opponent does not give you the 2 counterblasts, that's why people don't really like to play Mega Trainer in this deck, which is understandable, which I will show you also the other choice that is very good. But the thing is with Deadly Lucifer is he has the ability that's, let me read him because it's a really long time. You choose one of your rearguards and you put it into the soul. When this card attacks at the, you may pay the cost. So when he attacks, you put one of your rearguards into the soul, and then you call 1 card from your hand to rearguard circle. He also does not call to open rearguard circle. And if that card has a deadly in its card name, then you pretty much could give that unit the extra 10k. So that's amazing. His second ability is also nice. For a counterblast of 1, he could get an extra 2k, which means boosted by the Wonder Boy, he could make the 21 column, but it costs you a counterblast. So yeah, the reason why you play him is because his first ability does not cost counterblast, and that sometimes does help out a lot. Then we have the Skydiver. We play him at 1. He's a combo extender, especially if you do not have counterblast to work with. And with that combo, he is a 21k attacker, which still is a 15k shield for your opponent. And most of the time, they would sometimes have to let him through. But when he hits, he goes to the soul and you call something from your hand. But that something you call from hand will also get that extra 10k from your Bad and Dragger. For the grade 2 lineup, the same as Skydiver, we have Deadly Mason. Deadly Mason is a card that you want to ride into. He has the Vanguard and the Vanguard ability. Whenever his attack hits, you counterblast 1, you put a card from your hand into the soul, and then you may call something from your deck to open Vanguard Circle. And the card that you pretty much want to call all the time is your Death Flag, because when Death Flag comes to the field in the battle phase, he gets you the ability that you show a grade 3 from your hand and you search Bad and Dragger from your deck to your hand, and you don't have to discard anything, which means it's a +1. You already got the card back from his ability. And most of the time you put a grade 3 in your soul, or a grade 0, like a draw trigger that you could just put into your soul for his ability. Next grade 2 that we have is the Devil Dome. The Devil Dome pretty much replaced the Bracky. Bracky was normally the card that you play in this deck, but the Devil Dome is kind of better. Why? Because he doubles his attack. So by himself he attacks for 12, which is the same as the 14 if you attack into a grade 3. But if you attack into a grade 2, then yes, the Bracky is better by himself. But Bracky boosted by a 7k attacks for 1721. 1621 by his own ability, while the Devil Dome will be 6 plus 7, so that's 13. Then he doubles his power, so that's 26, and 26 is just better than 21, of course, because that's a 5k shield more for your opponent to give up. But most importantly, if you use his ability with the Bad and Dragger, which he becomes 16, and 16 means let me see, that's 12, that's 32 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that's pretty amazing number when you kind of combine him with the break ride. He could hit high numbers, but also you could kind of give him the triggers, like put the triggers on him or boost him, and becomes even better and better, even stronger. So it's an amazing card with an amazing ability that fits perfectly into this deck. And he also kind of goes to the bottom of the deck anyway, so it doesn't really matter that you use him with Bad and Dragger or you minus with Bad and Dragger. 2 copies of the Clay Elemental, Heat Elements. His ability works perfect in this deck. Whatever his attack hits, you may search your deck for a Limit Breaker, get it to your hand and retire this unit. And pretty much he works perfect with him because you have 2 cards with the hit ability. Sometimes you use his ability to get him out and you attack with him again to get you that Limit Breaker to your hand, depending on what you want to have. Sometimes you want to have your Death Flag if you already have a grade 3. Sometimes you don't have a grade 3, you use this. And also in your Bad and Dragger turn, whenever he hits, he still gets you that Limit Break and retire himself, which is good because that's an extra card you have in your hand to put with your Deadly Emperor to your soul. So I will explain that combo, which he becomes the same as Zachary's. And I kind of always liked him more than Zachary's because his ability search you the grade 3 and he draws you blindly. But I wanted to play 2-on-2 to show you all the options, but I normally just play 4 copies of this because in most aspects I still find him better. The only thing that Zachary's is good at or better at is whenever you attack with him as a unit that you called with your Deadly Emperor, which I will show you later. Zachary's has the ability whenever his attacks hits, you Soul Blast 1, you draw a card and put this card to your deck, shuffle your deck. But most of the time you put it anyway with your Bad and Dragger, so it's not a minus. So it's kind of an extra draw. Okay, now for the great ones. Of course, the PG, as I said, you wanted to play her. I like to play both arts, and I like to play her at 4, but it's up to you to do that differently if you want to. We have the Reckless Express. It's an amazing card. It has the same ability as a Juggernaut and Bracky. Whenever it attacks, you Soul Blast 1, he gets an extra 5k, which makes him a 12k attacker, and with the skill of Bad Dragger would make him a 22 attacker, which could hit most Vanguards, which are 21 or even 11 or 10. So he's good because you could put him in the early game to boost something, put a draw trigger like in the front of them, attack with it, and if they attack the draw trigger, that's cool, but you could always move this up in your final turn and attack with it to hit for high numbers. We already explained the Death Flag. Death Flag is an amazing card you could use for your advantage, especially with Deadly Mason and Skydiver to get it in the battle phase, and with that you search a grade 3 Bad End Dragger from your deck. It could be a card with a dragon in the card name, or with Bad End in the card name, so you cannot search himself, of course. But what you want to do is you want to attack with Mason and then get this card out and search your grade 3 to your hand, the one that you need, which is your first right target. Elsa, we play her at 2, and Wonder Boy we play at 1. Also at 2. The thing is, Wonder Boy you want to have behind the Vanguard, and pretty much Eliza, it doesn't really matter. You would rather have her behind the rear guard because she's a 7k. But what you want to do is you want to have this card on the field before you get to your limit break. So sometimes it's also a card that you get out with your Deadly Mason to have on the field. And when your opponent sees this card and they cannot get rid of it, then they won't keep you at 3 damage. Because keeping the opponent at 3 damage was something that we did in the limit break era. Because yes, you cannot get your skills off. For the trigger lineup, you could play any heal you want to, as long as it's not this ugly heal. If you play her, then just don't. But I play 4 copies of Sandra. I like her. I like the art a lot. There are a lot of details on this card, like the ribbon right here, like the shield or the armor that she has on her shirt. It's really nice art. Also, you can see the background is also very nice made. So definitely a nice art to play. And also I would like to switch between heals between the deck and the other. We play as many Dudley triggers as we can because they work better with Lucifer. Although in this deck you would rather play the 5k draw triggers. Why? Because they make better numbers. Also boosting a grade 2, they hit for 14, while this hits for a strength 13 number. So that's why I normally play it like this. So I played the 4 copies of her and only 2 copies of him, and I think that also works better. After me testing the deck for a little bit again, now I kind of find this lineup better than the Schemer, because the Schemer is also a card that you don't really use a lot in this deck. Reasons are that you pretty much do not want to minus yourself from the field. So because of that, you will never really put him into your soul to give a unit extra 3k. While in the other deck profile that I did before this one, we definitely did that most of the time, because you don't really mind putting him in the soul as long as you have soul, because you gain an extra 3k, but you also gain the soul. And in this deck, it's not needed. The only thing that you would rather play Schemer, because he has the Dudley name and he works better with Lucifer. And Lucifer, as I said, calls a card from your hands with the Dudley name, and if it has the Dudley name, it gets the extra 10k. So Schemer could attack for 14, while the other draws, if you call them, they are just 5k. Same reason why we play the Dudley Striker, and because he has the Dudley name, so you could call him attack for 15, which is an amazing number if you attack into a grade 3, which has only a 10k body. Then we play the Silent Joker, an amazing card, and could sometimes be very strange for your opponent, because your opponent want to give you at 1 face-up damage, so you cannot use your Deadly Emperor. But with his skill, you pretty much could countercharge a damage, and you could hit for your opponents, or you could hit your opponent for a very strong turn. Okay, let's show you the big combo, and that would be it for this video. Alright, so before we jump into explaining the combo, there are 2 starters that you could play. You have Mega Trainer and you have Smart Leader Dark Trainer. Mega Trainer counterblast is 1, and he retires himself, and then you search your deck for a grade 1 or less. And so he could search you your PGs, your Wonder Boy, whatever you want to have on the field or in your hand, because he searches your hand. So that's really good about Mega Trainer. The bad thing about Mega Trainer is he costs you a counterblast. Then we have Darkbringer. Darkbringer has the ability that whenever his attack hits, he could go into the soul, and then you could call something from your hand. Which means in your big turn, this would be a 15k attacker, boosted by a 7k or in a 6k. He could hit the perfect number, which is the 21-22. And that makes this card very, very, very strong. Also, if he does not cost you a counterblast. There is one downside to this card, which is he has to go behind the Vanguard, and he cannot go behind the Vanguard because you cannot move him up anymore. So we will talk about both scenarios, but I do like Mega Trainer more because he fits into my playstyle more. And normally you use 2 counterblasts in the early game, one with Deadly Mason and one with Mega Trainer, and pretty much you need 2 more for your Deadly Emperor, but you also need Limit Break 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, perfect. Let's say that your opponent keeps you at 3 and you have to go for your Limit Break Enabler, then you pretty much, then your Dark Leader would be better. Okay, so let's go into the combo. So let's start with Mega Trainer, then I will show you the same combo that you do then with Darkbringer, if you played him, because the combo does look a little bit different then. So you ride into a Great One, it doesn't matter which. You would rather ride into a Wonder Boy, because the Wonder Boy is of course in 8k, and 8k is harder to hit. Your starter, which is Mega Trainer, moves behind your Vanguard. This is a very important factor. If you have another Great One in your hand, then you would rather keep the Wonder Boy in your hand and you ride into, let's say, a Death Flag. Okay, then it's their turn. Let's say they attack into you and you have 1 damage because of that, which is a draw trigger. Perfect, because we are lucky. Then you ride into your Deadly Mason. If you have 2 counterblasts to work with, that's perfect. But let's say you have 1, or why not? Let's say you have 2. So you use now the Mega Trainer skill to catch your Wonder Boy, or sometimes you already have your Wonder Boy in your hand. This makes a 17k column, which when you attack into the Great One, this is a perfect number. If you have only 1 counterblast, and that's when the Mega Trainer behind the Vanguard becomes effective. If I could find my Mega Trainer, oh, there it is. This becomes effective because this still hits for 14, and which means that if they put a 10k shield from their hand, which is 1 trigger, it would be a 1 to pass. That's what your opponents normally would do. You need 1 more attacker on the field, and the card that you want to have on the field is more cards to put pressure, so another Deadly Mason or the Heat Element. Doesn't matter which one you have. Let's say the Heat Element for argument's sake, because we only have 1 counterblast. So you attack with this. This is 14 to their Vanguard, and then let's say they don't guard. Then the attack hits. You put 1 card from your hand into the soul. That's why you play so many draws, because you could just easily put them to your soul. You counterblast 1, and you could call something from your deck. So what you want to call right here, if they are a 7k and they didn't get a trigger, you could call the Death Flag right here. If they did get a trigger, you could call him right there. Doesn't matter, both works. I like to play 1 strong column. It's better than having 2 columns. If they have rear guards, then you could also do it like this. It depends on your opponent's field, but pretty much you want most of the time you just want to call Death Flag, and then you show your opponent a Grade 3 from your hand, and now you search your Badan Dragger. So that's perfect, because now you have your first right target and second right target. Then you attack with this first, because he also has the on-hit ability that whenever he hits, he retires himself, and you search a Limit Breaker to your hand. That's why if you, let's say if you already have a Badan Dragger in your hand, and you showed the Badan Dragger with his ability to add 1 more Badan Dragger, now you still don't have your second right target, which is Deadly Emperor. So you would rather have this right here. You attack for, this is 16, so if they are 6k, this is perfect. Maybe you got a trigger, you put it right there. Attack for 21. But 16 into their Vanguard, you retire him at the end of the battle if he hits, and you get your Limit Breaker to your hand. And with that, you have like the perfect setup. Okay, then it's their turn. They attack into you. Let's say you damage check Deadly Mason, and they attack into you again, or you guard or not, doesn't matter. You stand. You need only one counterblast for your Mega Trainer, and you draw. And pretty much now you ride into your Bad Dragger. You counterblast one. You use the ability of the Mega Trainer to search your Wonder Boy. If you already have Wonder Boy, you search something else. Maybe a Limit Break Enabler, that's perfect. Maybe a Perfect Guard, that's good. And then you put the Wonder Boy right there. Alright, if they are on grade 2, you could do this, because you don't want to commit to the field too much. If you have another attacker that could put pressure on your opponent, like him, or like Zachary's, then you could do that. That's also the good thing about Zachary's, is he does put the pressure, the same as the heat element. So then maybe you could do it like this. This could work, because the 7k could sometimes still hit your opponent's lower rear guards. But most of the time, you don't want to commit to the field that much, especially against Retire Clan, and because you also need cards in your hand for your big turn. So you would rather have them then. So I would keep this in my hand, call only the Limit Breaker behind the Death Flag, and you don't place 10 triggers, you attack for 21. And this is again a huge column for your opponent to deal with. You drive check, then you attack with this, and that's it for your turn. Next turn, because your opponent knows that you have a Limit Breaker on the field, that's why you also sometimes get him out with your Deadly Mason. When Deadly Mason attack hits, if you already have a Bad Dragon in your hand, sometimes it's good to get the Eliza or Elsa, and Elsa will give you the Limit Break, of course. So now they attack into you. Let's say they do you 2 damage, so 1, 2, and they retire this as well, because they are very good. Now you get into your big turn, and you stand everything up. If you have one more counterblast to work with, that's pretty good. So let's say you damage check also a heal, so you healed 1. That could be perfect, because now you have 3 counterblasts to work with. But if not, 2 counterblasts is also nice to work with. You only need that 4 damage, or the 2 face-up damage for your big turn. Alright, so now you ride into your Deadly Emperor. Even by having 3 counterblasts, but it would not be like this, it would be like this, because you healed 1, let's say. So you had the 2 face-up damage, you damage check a heal trigger, you heal 1, then you damage check 1 more, and then you have 3 face-up damage. She still gives you Limit Break because her ability. But let's say that you end up with having 3 face-up damage. Alright, now you ride, so you have the break right. He gets extra 10k, and anything that attacks get an extra 10k because of the skill of Bad Dragon. So let's give him the extra 10k right here, and let's keep this like this, so you and your opponent remember that you have the Bad Dragon beneath him, the same as we do with strides. I normally like to do it like this, so they know that you have the Bad Dragon skill beneath it, because you just want to be clear to your opponent. Right, on this side you want to have a booster. It could just be a draw trigger, or it could be anything. It's just good to have a booster. If you do not have anything in your hand you want to lose, it's also alright. So let's say you put a draw trigger right there, and if you have a Skydiver in your hand or a Deadly Mason, then you also want to put that on the field. Anything that you want to also to put back in your deck, you can put on the field. If it's a Skydiver, then you call right here, because this would make the 16k column, which is good. If you have a Deadly Mason, then you put it right there, because this makes 16k column, so that's good. Again, it would be 26. Okay, so let's say you had the Deadly Mason because you have 1 counterblast to work with. If you have a Skydiver, it's even better. So in the perfect scenario, you have this. You need 1 more attacker in this side. It could be the second Bad Dragon you already have in your hand, or it could be, in the perfect situations, the Devil Dome. Okay, so your field would look like this. First, you attack with the Skydiver. because he has the on-hit ability. You could boost him right away, because why not? As I said, he has the on-hit ability, so why not? So this would be 16. With his ability, he gets an extra 10k. So this would make the 26 column. And this is a very, very, very devastating move for your opponent to deal with, because they don't want to let him hit, because otherwise he will go into the soul and you will call something from your hand. But most of the time you don't have that much attackers into your hand, so they will guard this, and that's okay, because you will have this back to your deck, and that's fine. So yeah, you attack, they guard that attack, because he has a very strong on-hit ability. They would rather take this attack, and then you attack with him. You Soul Blast one more, and you have now 3 cards in your soul, so that's good. You don't really use that much soul in this deck. So this would be 6. You give him first the 10k from his ability, so that's 16. And now he doubles his power, because you Soul Blasted 1. So the 6 becomes 12, the 10k becomes 20, so that's 32. 32, again a huge number. Your opponent would take this. So they guard that, they take this, and he goes back to the deck. Then you attack with the Deadly Emperor. The Deadly Emperor, of course, also gets the 10k from the Baton Dragger, because you ride on top of him. This is a 21 column. With the Deadly Emperor, this is a 31 column, so that's a huge number. Most of the time, your opponent would take this, because he does not have an on-hit ability or something. You Count Blast 2. You put 2 cards from your hand into the soul. Mostly would be draw triggers, or just great ones and stuff that you have in your hand. But if you already had this, then you would rather put that there. But let's say that it's another grade 3 and a draw trigger. You put those into your soul, and you call 2 cards from your deck. The 2 cards that you want to call depend on how much damage your opponent have, and you thinking they would guard this or not. So let's say they are sitting on 4 damage, then most of the time they will not take this attack. So that would mean that you want to call something which has the on-hit ability, like the Deadly Mason, and something that is strong, like the Devil Dome. If your opponent is at 5 damage, then you could call 2 Devil Domes, so cards that only gets power, and that's why you play 3 and you don't play Juggernauts. If you had only 2 damage to work with, so you Counter Blast the 2 for his ability, you don't have any other Counter Blast to use for the Deadly Mason, then you would rather have the Skydiver. So you would do it like this. It depends. It really depends on the situation, but most of the time you do it like this. And you could also go this way, because he will become even better. And now what you want to see in your drive check is a critical trigger. That's why you still play 6 crits and you don't play only 4 crit and 8 draw. So by drive checking a critical trigger, that would mean that you will give the crits right there. So he gets the crits while he gets the power, because you want to have 2 strong attacks. If you had the Counter Blast again, then you would rather have Deadly Mason. Why Deadly Mason? Because Deadly Mason could have a good column right here, but again, as long as you have Skydiver, you do Skydiver, because Skydiver is free, and normally the Deadly Mason will also go into the bottom of the deck after the attack, because Deadly Mason is only better than Skydiver in the early game. But let's say, as I said, you don't have any Counter Blast and you go this way. Okay, so he gets the crits, he gets the power. Now what you want to do is you want first to put the high pressure on your opponent with attacking with this guy, because he still hits for a huge number. And now you know what your opponent has in their hand. So let's say they have 4 cards in their hand and they have to PG this attack. Why PG this attack? Because this is huge. This is he also gets the 10k, of course, from his ability. But first you count the booster. So this is 7, this is 6, so this is 13. 13, this is 23, and 23 by 2. The 20 becomes 40 and 3 becomes 60. So yeah. So the 13 becomes 36. I mean 46. So a huge number again. So they would have to perfect guard this, and then at the end of the battle he goes back to the deck to the bottom by his skill, or you shuffle with his own skill. It's up to you to choose, because both of them are auto abilities. Now you attack with this. This is 11, 16, and by his ability this would become a 26. And if he hits, he goes to the soul, and you call something from your hand. Depending on them getting a trigger or not, you think about calling something from your hand. Sometimes you call something like a death flag. You show grade 3 from your hand and search a Battling Dragger. And sometimes you could call something that could benefit from that. So if you have another Devil Dome, then that's perfect, because the Devil Dome could attack again and he will become 16 because of his ability. Then you Soul Blast 1 and you double that, so that's it. Again, another let me see, he is 16 by this, so that is 16, 30, 32. So 32 to your opponent Vanguard, again a huge number. So he does put a lot of work into the deck. Okay, now let's say that you don't play Mega Trainer, but you play Darkbringer. So your setup would look a little bit different. That was actually the big turn, as I showed you. But when we do it with the Darkbringer, it's a little bit different, because you ride on the top of the Darkbringer, and what you want to do is you want to have a Wonder Boy in your hand. So you ride, you have like this, and they attack into you again. You have 1 damage to work with, and now you ride into your Deadly Mason as the perfect ride target, and now you want to put a booster behind this. And the booster needs to be a Wonder Boy for the better numbers, because this is 17, and when you go into your grade 3 it will become 21. And you don't want to put a 7k behind him. Maybe if you know that your opponent plays a 10k body Vanguard as a grade 3, you could do this. But yeah, I don't know. Most of the time in this era where people already have their limit breaker and their break ride, especially because all break rides are 11k, so you need to put it like this. If you don't already have Wonder Boy, or you you could maybe never see Wonder Boy if you don't play Mega Trainer. That's why you do need to play more Wonder Boys. But let's say you have it like this, but you do have the other attacker, which is that. This could still work. You attack for 9, they would guard this attack most of the time, and then you attack with this, and then if they let this through, then he retires, and you could search a grade 3 in your hand. But he becomes less effective. But let's say you have the Wonder Boy, then it's good, because you could do it like this. You attack with this first, then you activate his ability of God Blasting 1, putting a card from your hand to the soul. Now you could call the Limit Break Enabler, because again, if you already have the Death Flag in your, the Battling Dragon in your hand, you do it like this. The Limit Break Enabler could become right here or right there. It doesn't really matter, as long as you could hit your opponent, and as long as you keep her on the field, so you need to guard her. But most of the time you do go for your Death Flag, and your Death Flag could come right here, search you the Battling Dragon to your hand, and then you attack with this into a Vanguard or into their Vanguard, and you attack with that, and he will retire himself to search you your second white target if they let all the attacks go through. If not, you could also intercept with it or keep it on the field for next turn. So next turn they attack into you with 2 damage, because they are very strong and they know that you need the 2 Count Blast. Okay, so we stand everything right into the Battling Dragger, and then you could put something behind this, and now it would be perfect if you have the Limit Break Enabler, because this is a very good column attacking into the grade 2. So first you attack with your Vanguard for 21k. If you get triggers, you give everything to here. You could also say, hey, I attack with this first and then attack with a Vanguard. Depend if on him having Vanguards or not. So you attack for 21. He gets the 3k because he's 2k because he's boosted by Spark Brother. Then you attack with this, and then you attack with that. Okay, you have a huge field, a lot of cards from your hand, but most of the time you don't really have to commit to that field that much, because again, you want to have a lot of cards in your hand whenever you go into your next turn with your Deadly Emperor. Alright, so this is what happens. Then they attack into you. Let's say you intercept with this, and it's your turn again. Okay, so you understand everything, and now you ride into this. You already have the Limit Break Enabler, so 3 damage works, but let's say they gave you 1 more damage, then it's also good. And now it's better because you have more damage to work with, because you only used 1 counterblast in the early game for your Deadly Mason. You never use your Mega Trainer. You move this up and you call something behind it, which is a great one. And it should be at least a 6k. So a PG would do the trick as well. But if you have like a trigger which is a 5k, then that's less effective. But normally the PG or any other great one will, as I said, will do the trick. Let's say you have the Reckless Express, because that's even better. We never even talked about him in the combo. Reckless Express is also very good, because now like you could switch between these two, or if you have it this way, but normally you intercepted already with that right here, so you call something from your hand. So let's say it's a Reckless Express. You could attack with the Express, but you could also switch them up, which is better. Now you attack with the Darkbringer, boosted by the Express. This is a 12k. With this ability, this becomes 22. And now they need to guard this attack, because if they don't, he goes to the soul, and you could call something from your hand. And by calling stuff like the Death Flag, you already activate his ability to plus again, and those pluses will go into your soul. But sometimes you have, let's say, something like this in your hand, you could call that, or you could also just call playing a draw trigger or something. Doesn't really matter. You could just call a grade 3. As long as they hit high numbers, it's good. Now you attack with this again. This is a 21 column, goes to the bottom because of his ability. Then you attack with this, 17, goes to the bottom. Then you attack with this, activate his ability. 2 cards from your hand into the soul. Counterblast of 2. And you do everything all over again. But what Darkbringer gave you is the extra hit pressure, as in an extra Skydiver into your hand. The problem with him is he gives you an awkward field, you don't have the right booster behind the Vanguard, you want to commit to the field too much, and that's why Darkbringer is, in my opinion, less of a good card. But Darkbringer or Mega Trainer, the combo is still the same. And in the next turn, let's say that you ended up with this, so you have 4 face down damage because you used all of them, or they gave you just 1 damage, so you ended up on 5 damage. And now you cannot really use his skill. You could attack for 21, just plain, but that's it. And what you do want to do is you want to ride into the Deadly Lucifer. And that's why Lucifer is in this deck, because he does not require you to have Counterblast. So you ride into the Deadly Lucifer. So in the most situations, whenever you get into your Deadly Lucifer, you pretty much want to have your opponents, they are already on 4 or 5 damage. If they are on 5 damage, then they could not take anything. So you could just use that Counterblast to give him the extra 2k, which makes, again, a perfect column with the Wonder Boy. If they have killed the Wonder Boy, or if they are on 4 damage, then you would rather not use that Counterblast. And you would want to have a Deadly Mason in your hand. The Deadly Mason will become very effective because at the end of the battle that he attacks, you put one of your Regars into your soul, and then you may call something from your hand. And that's something that you call. If it has the Deadly name, then it gets the extra 10k. And that's why the Deadly Mason is very effective. So what you want to do is you could move this up. You could call something behind it from your hand, because you kind of want to finish your opponent off this turn. And as long as you're sitting on him, you could do this without costing you a Counterblast. That's why he's very, very, very good right target after you go into your big combo. Most time people would die on that combo, but if they don't, then okay. So you keep the Deadly Mason in your hand, and you want to call more attackers on the field that leaves an open Rhaegar circle behind them. That's the best thing that you could do. If you don't have that much attacker that leave an open Rhaegar circle behind them, then that's okay as well. Then you could do it like this way. It could still work. but most of the time it's better to have something that could leave an open Vanguard circle behind. So you attack first with this, try to hit a Vanguard or something. Oh, it's better to do it this way, my bad. So you attack with this, try to hit a Vanguard, or if you have something that could hit the Vanguard, then you attack with this and try to hit the Vanguard. But again, in the best situations, you want to have something that leaves an open Vanguard circle behind them. So you would rather do it like this, and then it would look like this. Okay, so you attack with this, you activate his ability, and then you put him to the bottom of your deck. He gained the extra 5k, of course, so he hits for 12. Now you attack with this. At the end of the battle that he attacks, so first you do your drive check. Let's say you drive check a critical trigger. What you want to do is you want to give the power to her and you want to give the crit to him. Okay, second check, let's say it's nothing. At the end of the battle, you put one of your Vanguards into your soul. Now you could afford to put the Wonder Boy into your soul. Again, you want to finish your opponent off, and you pull the Deadly Mason from your hand. It's a deadly, so he gets the extra 10k. Now you attack with this, he has the crit, they want 4 damage, they have to guard. You Soul Blast, again hits for a high number, then he goes to the bottom of the deck. Then you attack with this is again also a high number because this 16, 21, 31, and they have to guard this, otherwise you can't blast one, you put a card from your hand into the soul, and you may call something from your deck, which is most of the time the card that you just put back. But he's not that strong by himself, so yeah, it's less effective. But the combo with him most of the time require you to have no counterblast, and with no counterblast you could do a lot. And you could also like do it like this. Again, you always keep the Deadly Mason or a deadly card in your hand, and you go just like this. You attack for 11k, or you'd rather than do it like this. Let's say you have this in your hand and you had the Reckless Express right there, because that was how we ended up the last combo. Okay, so you attack first with this. You use the counterblast that you had for his own ability, which is also effective. So attack with this, 11k to the Vanguard, they guard, and you attack with this. And then you use his ability at the end of the battle to put this Vanguard into your soul and to call the Deadly Mason right there. Or let's say you don't have Deadly Mason, you could also call this. You give this extra 10k. As long as it's deadly, it's good. Now you attack with this, you attack with that. That's pretty much it for your turn. But again, it's a limit break deck, but it does have a lot of different combos to go through, depending on your hand, depending on the opponents, the pressure that they could put against you. But it's really a nice deck to play. It's also a lot of fun to play. Also, the choices between your starters does make a difference. So a lot of different aspects of this deck. I do love to see these cards back, and the card that we always wanted to see back is the Deadly Emperor. But I think Bushiroad is being a little bit cautious with cards that they give with Deadly in their card name. That was actually it for this deck profile. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know it's long deck profile, but again, there's so much to talk about when it comes to Spike Brothers, and you guys are enjoying these videos even if they are long, because I do explain a lot in them, and I'm happy that you guys are enjoying them. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Till next time.